Hey, good afternoon. Um, Many thanks for this nomination for the Teacher of the Year election. I'm very honored. I'm very pleased as well. Of course, I always. That was my wife and the dogs.
Come on.
Out you go. Oh, now the dogs have to be shut in a cage just because of this bloody movie. Anyway, let's just continue. I'm very happy and honored to be nominated. Uh, And part of that is because I really, really enjoy teaching. I think it's a very important part and one that I very much enjoy. So I'm very happy also to get some appreciation from the side of the students. So many thanks. That's number one. Secondly, apologies that I can't be here today. Unfortunately, I'd already committed to giving a colloquium in the UK, in Portsmouth. So that's what I'm doing actually right now. So that's why, unfortunately, I couldn't make it this afternoon. And the question is, are we living in a simulation?
Oké, so let's ask the experts. Hier zijn twee ervaringsdeskundigen. Jongens, wat denken jullie? Leven wij in een simulatie? Wonen we in een soort van Minecraft-wereld?
Ja, ik denk het eigenlijk een soort van wel. Hetzelfde materiaal en ja, dat soort dingen.
Oké, en Boudewijn, wat denk jij?
Ja, ik denk het wel, want ze hebben wel veel overeenkomsten, maar het is toch ook wel een beetje anders. Want ik bedoel, Minecraft, dan kan je gewoon naar een andere wereld opeens. Dus niet helemaal. En in Minecraft daar speel je toch ook niet je hele leven.
Nee.
Dus, en je leeft wel je hele leven in de echte wereld, hoogstwaarschijnlijk.
Now, one important aspect of physics, of course, is doing estimates. So what sort of estimates could we make for this question? Are we living in a simulation? Yes or no? Well, at first sight, the odds seem to be overwhelming in favor of living in a simulation. For the following argument. Suppose there's a single universe. In that universe, there's just one possibility that our life, our world, us, are real. However, in such a universe, of course, there's gazillions of stars with gazillions of planets, and there will be civilized life in one of these planets. We know it's true here, and there's plenty out there where the same will happen. Now, it might well be that at some point, these civilizations come to the point that they can run simulations. Right? All of those simulations could equally well be us. So just the overwhelming number of planets and civilizations out there would imply that there's many, many possibilities for us, our life, our world, to be realized as a simulation. Right. So how can we test whether we live in a simulation? Yes or no? Well, really the only thing that we can do is exactly what we're doing as physicists anyway. We're studying the laws of physics. And maybe somewhere in those laws of physics, we could discern something that would indicate whether it's a real world or a made-up world, a designed reality. How could you, for instance, run into this? Well, you could imagine that somewhere in the laws of physics, there's a little sign, a little indication that we're living in a simulation. For instance, suppose there'd be a very rare choice of parameters or choice of whatever, particles, choice of physical laws. Right? Suppose there'd be a very, very rare and special choice. If this is a universe, that's very hard to explain. Why would the universe have chosen this very, very specific number? However, if we'd be living in a simulation, this might exactly be a hint of our maker that we are living in a simulation. Maybe our maker realized at some point that we would be starting to ask exactly these questions and we'd be looking for the answer in the laws of physics. And he thought, well, if these guys are clever enough in my simulation, at some point they're going to test these things and they're going to look into the laws of physics to see whether these are sort of natural laws to be expected or whether they're very special laws. So we could just see in our laws of physics whether there's any evidence for such special or rare occurrences. And it turns out that there's plenty. Throughout the 20th century, we've made a number of discoveries which seem to require a lot of fine-tuning for certain parameters. There's a number of things that we have a hard time explaining and don't appear natural to us at all. For instance, if you go to the standard model of particle physics, there's a lot of particles out there, and they all come in a very specific pattern. Now, some of these patterns are dictated by symmetry, so there's a reason why they're there. But there's also patterns which don't have a symmetry explanation. For instance, there's 3 generations of quarks and 3 generations of leptons. And it could well have been otherwise. There's no reason why these numbers are the same, and moreover why there is a second and a third generation in the first place. The universe doesn't need these. So that's one. Secondly, there's the Higgs particle. The Higgs particle is something that the standard model needs, and that's why it was predicted 30, 40 years ago and subsequently found just a few years ago. But its properties are very, very peculiar. For instance, its mass has a very, very special value that gives rise to the possibility that the standard model is valid all the way up to the Planck scale. Now, there's no reason for this to be true because we know, or at least we're expecting, new physics to come in between. So we don't understand why the Higgs particle has exactly this mass, and moreover, we don't understand how this mass is stable against all sorts of quantum corrections. So again, it seems that the Higgs mass has adopted a very, very special value, and we can't explain why it'd be that one. Supersymmetry would be a possible explanation, but then again, we've been looking for SUSY in the laws of physics and we haven't seen any so far. So it's this kind of arguments that could indicate whether we're living in a natural, real world or in a very fine-tuned designer world, a simulation. Another example is to look at the universe. As you know, the universe is gigantic, and we've discovered a large part of the laws that govern the universe throughout its entire history. In fact, out of the last 13.8 billion years, we understand 99.9999999%. But there's a number of massive questions that have come up. For instance, we know that the universe has a cosmological constant, which is like a positive energy that's pushing the universe outwards. It's counteracting the attractive force of gravity. And because this cosmological constant or dark energy is dominating the universe right now, it's overcome this attraction of gravity and hence it's pushing the universe out, and hence the universe is expanding at a faster and faster rate. We're living in an accelerating universe. Now, how much cosmological constant, how much dark energy do we need for this? It turns out that the measured value that we have is way smaller, way lower than any other scale out there. So it's a very unnatural, seemingly fine-tuned small value. Would this be a natural choice? Not at all. And if we continue on this theme of the universe, of course, another possibility to test whether we're living in a simulation is just to look more and more towards the past, into the history of the universe. And then maybe at some point we could see that the universe was actually designed and created, programmed. Right, so as I mentioned, the universe as we know it is 13.8 billion years old, and throughout the 20th century we've made impressive progress, massive progress in understanding this 13.8 billion years. And indeed we can now understand the universe up to a few fractions of a second after what we call the Big Bang, the moment when everything seems to have begun. However, in the process of pushing this understanding further and further back, we've discovered that after the Big Bang, a very particular process has taken place. It's called inflation, and what it's done is it's taken this primordial universe and it's stretched it to gigantic distances. And because of that, in our observable universe, we can no longer probe these things which have been pushed far away from us. So we only have access to a very limited portion of the original universe. And in practice, this implies that we really have no way of testing what happened before inflation. Inflation is like a giant smokescreen that sort of obscures everything that happened before it from observation. Well, you must have noticed that I've been waving my hands a lot over the last 5 minutes. And partly that is because I like to explain things with waving my hands, but also because it's a very hand-waving argument, right? All of these arguments about that there seems to be very rare occurrences in the laws of physics that we can't explain and hence might hint at something beyond reality. It's hard to tell whether these are real, really rare events that need an explanation beyond reality, or whether there's a perfectly good physical explanation for all of these events. Right? Of course, we've seen many instances in the past where there seemed to be a miracle happening and we couldn't explain it, and we looked to gods, or maybe nowadays we'd look for a simulation to explain this. And later on it turned out that there was a beautiful and very natural physical explanation for all of these events. Right? Maybe that's going to happen for all of these rare occurrences that I mentioned before. Right? Of course, this is in some sense what the history of physics tells us, right? That more and more things are explainable. And perhaps this point is the very strongest argument that we're living in a simulation. Because isn't it very remarkable and striking that actually all of these events out there can be explained in terms of physics? And of course, as we all know, the laws of physics are written in math. Why is mathematics so indispensable, so incredibly useful in describing the entire world, in describing reality? This has been hinted at by Wigner by the slogan, the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics in physics. Why does everything, when you look into the details and the fine prints, why does all of that boil down to some mathematical law, some mathematical process? In a real world, part of our universe, there'd be no reason for that. However, if you'd be living in a simulation, this would be perfectly natural, because the simulation by itself, of course, consists of some algorithm which encodes all of the laws in our world, our reality, in terms of some simple laws. Right? So the very fact that we can study physics and we can convert all these processes that we see of our reality into specific laws might be the very strongest argument that we have for living in a simulation. Thank you very much. Oh, by the way, and also thank you very much both for the nomination, and again, apologies, I can't be here today. And finally, of course, lots and lots of fun with the election later on. Ciao!